Okay, so welcome to our first ever incubator / podcast recording all at the same time. I'm super excited to have Jacq Fisch with us here today. Jacq is an author, a copywriter, and an intuitive writing coach, and she's the founder of the Intuitive Writing School, which is a space for creatives who have a writing project on their heart and business owners who want to sound authentic while they make an impact on the world. So Jacq, welcome to the podcast. I always want to say Jacq now, because now I'm thinking of you as like Jacq when I'm seeing the Q, but it is Jacq.
I love it. Yes, just Jacq. I know Jacques sounds fancy and French, and Jacqueline is a French name, but I am neither fancy nor French. So Jacq is perfect.
Okay, perfect. Well, welcome, Jacq.
Thank you so much, Kate.
Yeah. Do you want to tell us a little bit about just kind of your background and your story and how you got to the place that you are today before we dive into the content?
Absolutely. So I did not necessarily grow up thinking I wanted to be a writer. I absolutely was a creative kid, though. I was into art. Actually, when I was 10, I wanted to grow up and be a rich and famous fashion designer. I was very into like drawing clothes and things like that. Convinced myself not to go to fashion school all on my own. No one told me not to. I just told myself it was going to be too hard. Besides, I didn't know how to sew. So I went to business school and landed in corporate America, where I worked for 13 years. I did a lot of project management, program management, crisis communications, corporate communications for big government projects, big healthcare, places like BlackBerry. And through 3 layoffs in 5 years, twice from the same company, definitely learned quickly, or rather slow learner, that job security was a myth, and it was not, you wouldn't find it at a company. After returning to work after my first maternity leave, so my son was probably 6 months old at this time, and now they're 14 and 11, so this was many years ago. I returned back from my maternity leave, and I'm sitting in this boardroom at this consulting company, just looking around like, what am I doing here? This can't be it. Like, this is boring. But I didn't know what else there was to do. Handful of years later, I changed our family's diet overnight when I helped my son avoid an unnecessary tonsillectomy for changing up our diet. And that led me to get interested in food. I started a food blog. I was writing about plant-based eating, and which led to teaching local workshops and teaching other busy working professionals how to eat more plants without just like nuking a veggie burger and calling that dinner. And that was fun. And I was really enjoying the blogging. Over time, I went away from being plant-based. I'm back now, but that led me to not want to do that blog anymore. And what I realized, though, was it was the writing that was the part that lit me up the most. And looking back at my corporate experience, I was good at it. It was one of those effortless, natural things I didn't think about. So I wasn't formally trained in writing or creative writer. I wrote proposals selling millions of dollars of work. I helped everyone with their LinkedIn profiles and bios and crisis communications. So in the technical world, like if BlackBerry service would go down, I'd talk to the technical people, figure it out, and translate it into English for the rest of the world, like a public statement, that kind of thing. So I was like, there's something to this writing thing. And I was still in a consulting role at the time, in a communications change management role. And I told my boss I wanted to do more writing, more communications. And he said, you need to go learn this software instead. I don't even remember what it was called. You need to be more well-rounded. I was like, I don't know about that. And then he said, well, if you want to do more writing work for clients, why don't you sell that work for us? So I don't know if anyone has worked in a consulting business, but you don't get paid the rate that the clients pay in a big consulting company. I was like, how about I just go sell this work on my own, work half the time and make the same or more money? So that's what I set out to do. I grew my business in the side. It took me roughly 1.5 years to get going. I emailed everyone I knew in my network to say, I'm starting my own copywriting business. I'm happy to help you for free for a testimonial. And that led to some free work, which led to great testimonials, which led to them passing my name along. And within a year and a half, I had more than enough work to keep me busy. So I stepped away from my corporate job in 2017 and never looked back. So I initially started as a done for you copywriter, writing for all kinds of businesses, which I still love doing today, because now I get to take that writing that I do for my clients and I brought it in a coaching aspect. So because I'm not formally trained in writing, and I think most business owners don't need to be, I see a lot of businesses get stuck in procrastination, perfectionism, overthinking, and it's often because of a crappy English teacher they had in grade school that let them think that they weren't a great writer, or they came from corporate and they think that corporate writing needs to be a certain way. We need to sound fancy and like we know what we're talking about and use jargon and all these ideas that we have. So with coaching, most people are good writers. All they usually need is usually some ideas to simplify it and just make sure it's clear and connect. That's my definition of good writing. It's clear and it connects with your reader. So started as copywriting, which then led to coaching, writing my own books, leading a writing community, creating templates and courses. So doing lots of different things. And I love it because I get to bring all that expertise across the board. So that was a long and winding journey, as is usually the way.
I love it. There's so many good nuggets in there. And I feel like this concept of like having teachers who told us that we weren't good at something, and then we just have internalized that for the rest of our lives, is something that's been coming up a lot for me lately. And so that's just so interesting to hear that, especially with regards to writing, which I think people think you're either like born a brilliant writer or you're not. And it's not a skill that you can learn, which is absolutely not true.
Yeah, 100%. I hear so many horror stories of teachers who think they're doing a good job or doing a student a service by like marking up their work, giving them a low grade. Like, so my son he just finished the 9th grade. His English teacher this year told him, and actually told the whole class, you guys will be lucky if you get a C. Like, that's the highest grade I'm going to give. Like, what? And there was one case where of course, he got a C on an essay. And I read it. I'm like, I think this is great. You got your point across clearly. I know what you're talking about. I know your position on this. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I love all the different examples of writing too that you shared. And I know now you're really focused on intuitive writing. So what is intuitive writing? And can you kind of explain the concept of finding flow in writing?
Yes. Intuitive writing and flow go hand in hand. So I also like to start defining things with the opposite. So intuitive writing is the opposite of writing with our brains, trying to overthink, overanalyze, self-critic, all that extra noise in our heads to get our words out on the page. Intuitive writing is letting our body lead the way. And another question that comes up with most business owners and anyone who's writing anything, one of the biggest questions I get is about resistance. And they say, how do you get past resistance? Does it ever go away? And I think with intuitive writing, when you shut your brain off, resistance is only there when our brains are a little bit too active, let's say. It's telling us we need to write like this other expert, or what about this other business owner, or it's all been said before. All those voices, we need to almost, the way I see it is like taking our brain out of our head for a minute while we're writing, putting it on the side of our desk so that we can write. And I think the other thing that comes into play when people say that writing takes too long or it's hard, 9 times out of 10, they are trying to edit while they write. And that's hard. So I don't recommend that. 1000% recommend separating writing from editing. So when you are only writing, you're not editing, the goal is to write as fast as you can, or write what Anne Lamott calls the shitty first draft, or SFD.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yes. So good.
Everything you've ever read has been an SFD, 100%.
Yep.
So some tips to do that, like getting that intuitive writing out, turn your brain off, write as fast as you can. Set a timer, 25 minutes, if you like a Pomodoro type idea. Write as fast as you can. I tend to not look at the screen. Just write until you're done. If you want to keep writing after the timer goes off, keep going, and then put it away. Ignore the red squiggly lines telling you about your typos. So in my next book, I included a screenshot of one of my first drafts because I like to show people an example. Some people tell me, my clients tell me, like, here's an SFD. I'm like, this is not an SFD. This is like almost ready to publish. Here's an SFD. It's a bunch of words that barely make sense, bullets, ramblings. It's like stream of consciousness.
But that's like where all the good ideas come, right? So once you get flowing with that, makes so much sense. I mean, I agree. I feel like as a journalist in a past life and a writer my whole life too, I've had the same experience where if you stare at a blank page forever, it's because you still have your brain in your head and you're trying to think about it that way. But like you said, I love even just like the visual of taking your brain out and putting it on the desk next to you, or like close it in a drawer and then just start writing. And it literally doesn't matter if the first thing you start writing is, I don't know what to write about right now. I'm blocked. And then like, just keep going and something will come.
Yes. I love that. And you get it. You totally been there, and you know how to get the SFD out of your head.
Yeah. Yes. But I mean, only because I learned of that concept and I just put it into practice, and it was so true and so liberating. So, I think part of your process is also about kind of finding flow in writing and editing by aligning these tasks with the nature's rhythms, like the moon and the seasons and your menstrual cycle, and just kind of like bringing that cyclical living approach to writing. Is that right? Yeah.
Yep. So the first time I heard about aligning anything at all with the moon or a menstrual cycle, I was like, what? That is weird. Why would I do that? This was probably a handful of years ago. I was like, this makes no sense. And this idea kept coming up and I kept hearing about it. Someone brought these teachings into my writing community. So all I committed to doing at first was just noticing. I kept a journal, like what day I was in my cycle, what was going on with it. And at this time, like, man, I must have been like late 30s. So here I am, late 30s, only understanding what my cycle looks like and how it's different. And working with my naturopathic doctor, she showed me a chart of menstrual, like the hormones as they fluctuate throughout the menstrual cycle. And it was like, it's like a roller coaster. Like, no wonder I feel different all the time. And when it comes to writing, I think that's where it's so easy to judge our past selves, and in business too, where we sit down to write and maybe the ideas are foggy, they're not coming out, the editing's just not coming together right. And then we start to beat ourselves up and we're like, but it was so easy last week. Why did it just flow last week, but not this week? What's wrong with me? I should be better at this. So over time, through tracking my cycle, getting in touch with what was going on with the moon, working with astrologers, I started to be able to apply those lessons to writing. So going through the cycle, if we think of the energy of the new moon, which is the energy of winter, and energy of menstruation, there's no light in the sky. It's dark, it's inward. So of course, this isn't a time necessarily when we should be out there launching our books and trying to push and do a big writing project. This is when I like to do brainstorming, make decisions, intuitive downloads, have extra time on my calendar, like definitely blocking that space so I can do some more of that exploring. If I want to write, then it'll definitely be some stream of consciousness type writing. And then I always mix up waning moon and waxing moon when I'm thinking about the cyclical nature. Waxing moon, so spring follicular phase, is when we have all those ideas. So this is when I like to do some planning. And also in writing my last book, I aimed to do a lot of drafting during this phase. Like follicular phase is SFD season for sure. So getting all those ideas out, like for that roughly 2 weeks or so between the new moon and the full moon, just drafting stuff and not even looking at it until the second half of the cycle. So like full moon afterward. So full moon, energy of ovulation and summer, like full visibility. We are out there. That's when I might launch my writing. That's when I might publish it or shine some light on it. That's when I might do a bunch of edits and be able to quickly and clearly see what needs to go so that we can get through the rest of the cycle. And then finally, the waning moon phase or fall or luteal phase. Attention to detail during this time is so strong. I aim to do editing to my blog, if I'm making tweaks to my website copy, which I'm in the middle of doing a full rewrite, plus book edits. I'll aim to do this during that phase, either my own luteal cycle or waning moon, which is actually kind of cool if my cycle is not lined up with the moon, because I feel like I get 2 of those phases a month where I get to embrace both energies and use it that way. But I really love it to get that focus and complete like finish line, getting that scroll, getting ready for winter idea, getting all those things wrapped up and ready to go for the next cycle.
Yes, I love all of this. And, our audience, our incubator clients, we're big fans of cyclical living, and it's something that we work through in this program too. So thank you for the primer, and then kind of showing like which parts of the writing process fit best into which phases. It's super helpful.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, we have a question in the chat here that I think is perfect for right now, actually, which is, how do you go from drafting or brainstorm writing or the shitty first drafts to something that someone will actually want to read? Like, what's your process from finishing that SFD and then coming back?
Great question. Some of it will depend on what it is you're writing. Sometimes I'll get inspiration for something that I need to write about, and I'll do that SFD, and sometimes it'll sit in a folder for months. Like I might come back to it when it's time to do some editing on some things. I'll pop it open and I'm like, I don't really know what to do with this. So I just leave it and trust that you got the ideas out and know that they are there for when you want to come back to them. Almost always, I recommend taking at least an hour away from doing an SFD to taking it the rest of the way. And doing that gives you some separation. So you get it out on the page. If you can have lunch, go outside, do something else, or even better, depending on how much SFD writing you did, if you can come back to it the next day, it gives it space to breathe. And the other thing I find it does is we've gotten it out. It could be an idea that's been rolling around in our brains for a while. We've gotten it on the page. And then if you take a day or even a couple of days, depending on what it is you're writing, you're going to start noticing all these little synchronicities, coincidences, extra things you want to include in there. Because when you did that writing, you were planting these seeds in your unconscious mind about these topics. So you're unconsciously looking for some of these things. So I really
cool.
like, yeah.
I love that concept. Yeah, that's awesome. And then Erin has a follow-up. How do you categorize or organize all of the various SFDs, maybe topically?
Yeah, I keep a couple of things going for how first of all, I plan my SFDs for the most part. I'm definitely not a planner overall. I'm creative and intuitive and like to roll with it. And too strict of a plan keeps me, I think it feels too constrictive. I keep a 12-week plan. So every quarter I make a plan for the things I think I want to write, which often changes, but it's fine. I have that 12-week plan for the quarter. And then week by week, I go into what I'm going to write. So it might be draft blog on this topic or draft book chapter on this topic. So how I organize those, I use Google Docs for everything. I'll keep all my draft blog content in a folder that lives under, I'm thinking of the hierarchy: content, blogs, drafts. And then once that Google Doc draft is taken the rest of the way and it's published, I also make sure that that Google Doc is an exact replica of whatever I put on my blog, because who knows what could happen to your website.
Yep.
Yep. So I have those copies there and know that that's also a final version. So if it's book stuff, the way I write books, I usually have a topic. The topic might end up being the chapter. I keep each topic in a separate Google Doc, and that's my draft. So when organizing it from sections or essays into a bigger book, I can easily rearrange based on the order, or even if I wasn't sure the order, I know that I have all these essays that I can arrange into something.
Yeah, such a good idea. Okay, so what is the biggest mistake that you think creatives often make when writing, and how can they avoid it?
Oh, the biggest one, I see a lot of and they come from the overthinking. It's almost never something they've actually done. With having seen hundreds of people's writing, I have never seen anyone's writing and thought, this is hopeless, this is terrible, this is bad. I have never, ever, ever thought that. So probably the biggest thing, overthinking, which I also think is closely tied to perfectionism.
Yep.
Because we think it needs to be completely error-free, commas need to be all in the right place, or this sentence is too long, is this too rambly, all those things. And that keeps us from publishing our work and being able to share it with our readers who need to read it.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. And the only way to actually improve and to, get better is to keep doing it and keep practicing. It's like the most simple concept that we all know somewhere deep down, but we think like, no, if I just keep working on this one email, this one blog post, this one sales page, and never actually put it out into the world, then I'll get it better. Then it'll be perfect.
Yeah, you touched on it exactly. It's the practice. If you want to improve your writing skills, you have to write and keep writing and keep putting it out there. Yes, you'll look back on some of your older stuff. Your opinion will probably have changed, and we have to keep going. And the reminder I like for that is when you think of perhaps your favorite author, maybe you liked their earlier work, but you don't like their new stuff, or you like their new stuff, but not their old stuff. And I think that's our job as creators, to get out whatever is being downloaded through us at the moment. Like, that's our only job. We don't have to think about like, who's going to read this? Are they going to like this? This is very different from the last piece of writing. Whatever you're writing will resonate with the right people at the right time.
Right. No, it reminds me actually of Taylor Jenkins Reid, who wrote like Daisy Jones and the Six and Malibu Rising and some of these like New York Times bestselling books that are so good and some of my personal favorites. I went back to read some of her earlier books because I've loved every book of hers that's come out in the last like 10 years. And I hate to say this publicly because I don't want, obviously she's not listening to the show, but I wouldn't want her to feel bad, but it was not good. And I was like, what if she had stopped writing? Because I mean, it was good enough to be published, obviously, but like, what if she had stopped because it wasn't perfect? And then we never would have gotten these like beautiful books that came later.
Yeah, exactly. And what is perfect writing anyway?
Right.
Like,
right.
I don't know. I don't want to read perfect writing. I want your imperfect, honest writing. As long as it's honest and you're speaking truth, 100% put it out there.
Well, and writing is so subjective, right? Like, I'm sure there's people that could go back and read her earlier books and think, no, these are better. And they prefer those. Like, it's such a personal thing.
Yeah. Our job is just to get it out.
Yeah. So, what are some practical strategies that you have to overcome the resistance when it comes to writing? We just have to get it out. And we've talked about the shitty first drafts and like just getting started, but any other tips for how people can just get unstuck and, get their creative juices flowing?
Yes. Morning pages, 100% recommend. It's a term coined by author Julia Cameron from The Artist Way. Morning pages are 3 full-size pages of writing first thing in the morning. And stream of consciousness, no judging, no writing, no editing, anything like that. And when I wrote my first book, I told myself, or maybe I lied to myself, that I didn't have time to do morning pages because I was writing enough already. Turned out that was a mistake, because for the second book, I made sure to do morning pages every day. And that got the cobwebs out and cleared the way so that I could come to the page with more flow and being able to get it out, because I got all the other noise out.
Yeah.
Like the noise, so I could do that. So that was huge. Also expecting resistance to happen. So finding some ways to get around it. One of my favorite ways when I was working on my book, or if I have an important blog that I know I need to write, at the end of the workday, the day before I plan on writing this, I shut everything else down except that one piece I'm writing or working on. So when I turn on my computer in the morning, I'm like, oh yeah, that's what I said I was going to work on first. So instead of having to navigate there to find it, it is already there. And it's the first thing I get done. Nothing else happens until I do that. And even if I only spend 20 minutes on it, you'd be surprised at what you can write in a short amount of time if you do 30 minutes a day, every day.
Yeah.
It adds up.
For sure. Any other like writing or even editing rituals you recommend for increasing focus and productivity?
Yeah, I love a good ritual. See what rituals you already have. So you might not need to necessarily create something new, but some things you might like is you sit down at a certain time. Maybe you have a particular drink, like you have your latte. You light a candle, smell a certain scent of essential oil, like peppermint or something like that, or put some lip balm on, and then jump into writing. So that's your cue. You can also look at writing specific things in specific places in your home. So I know a lot of people find that sitting at their desk, the ideas don't flow, because that's where they do business. That's where they work. And I found this was pretty strong for me with both of my books. A lot of it didn't come out at my desk. It came out sitting on the couch. So you might have a different place for writing, like just that short perspective change or small perspective change in changing up your scenery can give you that new, like, okay, I'm on the couch. This is where I write my blogs. And that's what
I love the idea of a writing cue. It just makes me think. I used to, in college, when I would go for a run, I always started my run with this Incubus song. And now if I hear that song, I have to go for a run. Like it makes me want to run. So if it just like comes off on shuffle, in the car or something, I'm like, oh my gosh, you have to go running. So I'm noting to myself, like, on the days that I don't feel motivated, I should really just play that song. And then it's like Pavlovian response to just like, okay, I got to go do this thing now, but totally for running. That's amazing. I mean, for writing, sorry.
Yeah, I know you meant. I did that too. I wrote a mini book before I wrote my first 2 books, and I played Mumford and Sons Believe. And that was my cue, start writing. And sometimes I would play it on repeat for, I don't know, half an hour. And when I was done, I stopped writing. So that song makes my body write. So that's also the part about getting out of our heads and into our body. When we hear those cues, our body knows what to do.
Yes, I love this so much. And now we kind of touched on like creating an optimal environment for writing, and what you said about, maybe writing at your desk is not where you get your most creative ideas. Anything else that you would add to kind of the environment piece of improving your writing?
Great question. We live in a world of distraction. My 2 kids did distance learning this year, and they also did distance learning in 2020. So everyone's home all the time.
Yeah.
There is always someone around. probably one of my favorite things, boundaries for sure. And even today, I aim to get at least one piece of writing done for myself every day. And I don't mean done like start to finish, it's polished and ready to go. Even if it's 30 minutes of a draft, 30 minutes of editing something, whatever that is, putting my work first before meetings, before anything else, so that it is a priority. And that also shows my brain, hey, we're putting your work first. Like I come first, my
Yeah.
self-care, my writing practice.
So good. So good. Any particular tools or apps that you find helpful when it comes to intuitive writing and just maintaining that like consistent writing habit?
Let's see, for tools, if you do like a timer, I might suggest a Pomodoro timer. Some people like that. If you use like a Chrome extension or something to do that, I think the one I
Yeah.
use occasionally is called Marinara.
Yeah.
Some people find that ticking helpful, like that tick, tick, tick. Nope.
Oh, does it actually tick?
It can. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I have one that's like a tomato. I thought it was marinara, but maybe it's a different one, but I don't think it ticks. That's interesting. That could
Yeah.
be like your cue though. Like you hear that tick and it's like, okay, it's
Yeah,
writing time.
exactly. So you could do that if you like that. I only use the Pomodoro for things I'm resisting really hard. Like the
Yeah.
resistance is so strong. I'm like, I'm just going to do one Pomodoro cycle and call it a day. And usually, probably almost always, I surprise myself with how much I get done in 25 minutes. But other
Yeah.
than that, the best tool is turning all the other tools off. Like turning Wi-Fi off. Like you don't need anything to write.
Yes, that's such a good point to turn Wi-Fi off because sometimes when you're writing and then you think like, oh, let me just look this up. And it may even be something that improves your writing or it's for, it's related, but it just kind of breaks that creative flow. Like to just stay and like make a note to yourself, Google this after I'm done with my Pomodoro cycle or something.
Yeah, keep a notepad handy for other ideas that come up, the things you need to run out and get, because that
Yeah.
will happen. And it's a constant reminder. It's like, no, we are not doing dopamine today. We are
Yeah.
focusing on our writing.
So along these lines, like how do you strike a balance between structure and spontaneity in the writing process?
Great question. I definitely need a little bit of structure. And I think as creatives, if we have too much wide open space, it's hard to create, where it's like, well, I don't know what to write about. So if you say you need to blog, or you decided to blog once a week, or you decided to send a weekly newsletter, you sit down at newsletter writing time, you're like, okay, what do I want to write about? And there's nothing coming to you. So, oh, I'm just going to go pop on Instagram and see what's new over there. Maybe I'll find some inspiration. And we all know that's a bad idea. Don't do that.
Right.
So having a loose structure. So my content plan and my 12-week plan. So my 12-week plan also involves life stuff as well. Like write morning pages, read one chapter a day, turn phone off at 8, plan a date night, something like that. Doing those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And content plan, I have the loose plan for what I want to write each week. Or probably more accurately, about a year or so ago, I switched to aiming to publish every other week. So I have my topic there. So when it's blog writing time, having the time blocked on my calendar, I know I'm going to sit down and write. I know what the topic is. And often another idea might come up that I want to write on instead. And I usually check in to make sure it's not me chasing a shiny object, or if it's something timely and I need to get something out for that right now.
Right.
Then I will do that. I give myself to do that and rearrange what I had planned to write about. But having the plan there is helpful to fall back on in the absence of inspiration.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. So I'm curious, what do you think about the future of writing with all the AI stuff that's going on now?
Whew, I love this question. I was almost done editing my book. And the question of AI came up. I was like, I need to write something in here.
Yeah.
was like, I have to include it. So I am 100% on team no AI for writing at all. And I see a lot of content creators getting excited. I see a couple camps. Some are excited. Look how much I could draft when I use some generative AI to write me a blog post. Like, no, don't do that. And then I see some say, I use AI to write an article and then I take it and rework it and write the opposite. I'm like, I kind of see where you're going there.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't heard that one.
And then a lot are excited because they're like, it's free, I'm going to use it for now. And some are freaking out. So like, oh no, all the writing jobs are going to be gone. So in my experience so far, it's helped my business because some people who thought they could use AI to write realized they could not. And they needed an expert. So that has absolutely helped. The other thing I think is important is our unique divine connection. AI doesn't have a soul. And we're training, some people are voluntarily training AI with their writing, with all their prompts. And I think that's doing a disservice to like yourself if you're doing that, just because it's free and convenient. So there's certainly an aspect where AI currently, I forget what date it's combing stuff. I don't know if combing is the right word, but
yeah, 2021, I think it stopped.
Yeah, 2021. So anything that I've written that's public, yeah, it's combed, but I'm not willingly actively training the machine. I'm keeping that separate. I'm keeping my brilliant ideas for my writing. And I think it's only going to bring back a greater need for our stories, in-person connection. So I see like retreats, in-person type retreats getting even more popular because we need people. Like the machine's not a replacement.
Yeah. So I have a little bit of a different stance on it, though I very much appreciate yours. And what I'll share is just that my experience with AI is that it is a great brainstorming tool. And like, what's another way I could say this? Or like, I need like an example to include in this. Like, what are some examples I could use? And so I use it more for that. I have yet to find even a single short prompt that I can, or like a short paragraph or sentence that it writes that I'm just like copy paste. Like there's still so much human manual involvement in it, but I have really had a lot of fun playing with it as like a brainstorming tool. And so yeah, but I hadn't really thought about it from the perspective of like I'm training it when I do that.
Yeah. So that's the thing. Like, do you want to train the machine to sound like Kate so that whoever wants to sound like you can sound like you and ask questions like you?
Yeah, I mean, I guess in their writing, they potentially could, but I still think like you could say, write this like Winston Churchill, right? And like, it'll write it similar to how he, like the language and how verbose he was and the formality and things like that. But I don't know. I think it's still like, well, it's not exactly like Winston Churchill. It's a robot. Like,
right.
So I don't know, but it's really interesting to think about all the different things here. And right now I'm having fun with it, but there is a part of me that is like, what's the bad part of this, right? Like, what's the scary part of robots taking over the world that I need to be thinking about when I play with this? So
yeah.
There's
a movie. Is it Megan? Is that the name of the movie?
Yes.
Megan is the worst case scenario.
Okay, I haven't actually seen that, but I have seen like a commercial or preview, whatever it's called, trailer for it. And now I'll have to watch it. It's probably terrifying.
It's freaky.
Yeah. Okay. So we're coming up on the end here. I just want to make sure we have some time for some of the questions that have come up in the chat. I think that this is something that you've created, which is the BS free intuitive writing. Is that right?
Yes, in BS-free intuitive writing advice, because we take so much advice from people and in the writing world, like you need to write every day kind of thing. So yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So what are some of your top practical tips for BS free writing?
Uh, yeah, so let's start with that first one. You need to write every day to be a writer. No, you don't. I think there's also a difference between people who think about writing a lot and people who are writing. And I think if you're writing enough and getting your ideas out, you don't need to write every day. You're coming to the page and emptying out enough that you don't feel bad on the days you're not writing. So write as often as you like.
Yeah.
Do it as you want. Um, Number two, writing is fun and easy. 100%.
Mm.
When I first started wading into the writing world, I saw so much, and I still see it today, complaining, whining, frustration, torment, thinking it's hard, it hurts, it has to suck. And absolutely not true. Like anyone who says that, I'm like, nope, you're not for me.
Right.
Because we know that everything is energy, when we feel good when we're writing, our reader picks up on that. Like, can you imagine writing something and feeling really crappy? And we've all probably done it in our businesses where we're like, I have to get this newsletter out. I have to get the sales emails out and they better buy it. And you're like forcing it. It usually falls flat. And then the writing that flows that we don't think about, that's the one that we get like 10 email replies to. And everyone's like, I love this. You're like, really? I wrote that in 5 minutes and didn't really think about it.
Yes, 100%. And I love that too, because we're all about like managing your mind and thought work over here. And so, yeah, if you're like, what would happen to your writing process if you had the thought writing is fun and easy
Yeah.
every time you sat down to write? And like, can you borrow that thought if you don't have it currently and just see what happens when you approach it with that perspective?
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, love it. Okay, a couple quick audience questions. Why do you think most people are good writers? We talked about this in the beginning. What do you tell people who think they are not good writers?
I think most people are good writers because we're natural storytellers. So there's also, I think, something to keep in mind with how you best share information or how you process information. So if you are an internal processor, so you need to contemplate things, meditate, journal about something or write about it to know what you think about it, then writing is probably your first go-to. For those who are more likely to be external processors, those people who get to an answer to a problem or solution by talking it out, I suggest skipping the page and going to a talk to text app or something like that. Take a walk, talk for 5 to 10 minutes. You'll have more than enough words there to create a good length of a blog post.
Oh, yeah.
Starting with that, and often, especially if you're a natural speaker, you're going to say things that you wouldn't naturally say when you were writing. And to write like we speak, I think also starting with talk to text gives us a good way to take the way we would naturally speak and then turn that into our writing so it will sound and feel like us.
Yeah.
What
That's
was
my,
this? Yeah, go
sorry,
ahead.
go ahead.
I was wondering what the second part of that question was. I was like,
Well, it was
this
what do
too.
you tell, yeah, what do you tell people who think they're not good writers? But I think that's been the advice that a lot of our copywriting experts have come on and shared too. And I think it's so smart. And now this is where I would be like, go write it or go voice to text it, right? And then get it transcribed and then put it into AI and see like, what does it come out with? How does it take that idea and turn it into writing? But I know that's probably not how you would feel.
Yeah, I would take the text and jump in and just edit it myself because
Yeah.
with talking you often have extra words than you might use in writing.
Yeah, for sure.
What would I say to people who think they're not great writers? I would explore how you came to decide that was your story. Like, did you have a teacher? Did you have a parent, a boss, someone who told you weren't a great writer?
Yeah. One of my favorite coaching questions is like, when did you decide that?
Mm-hmm.
And like, when did you decide you're not a good writer?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cause at some point in your life, and I love your thoughts there about like going back to, did somebody tell you that? Probably so.
Right. Or someone led you to believe that, like someone criticized a story, but it wasn't necessarily your writing. It was that they didn't like your topic or your stance
Right.
on something, perhaps.
Right. Right. So last question here is, are journaling and drafting different for you?
Journaling, I do pen to paper because I think it's important to have that pen to paper body connection.
Mhm.
And for some people, I recommend, and I do this too, sometimes I might draft a blog post or a book chapter on paper, because it's also another way to get through resistance. Because if the screen is throwing up resistance or making you feel that way, pen to paper and treating it like a journal can help. And I mean, some days I might go into my morning pages session knowing what I want to write about later. I might naturally start exploring those ideas on that page.
Yeah.
So they're similar. And when I'm writing and when I'm doing an SFD, it has a similar energetic quality to it in that it's full surrender, no editing, no judging, just let it fall out.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess this is maybe the second part of that question. She was asking, curious about where your inspiration and creation comes from.
Yes, so many places. So one thing I believe for sure is writer's block is bullshit. I don't believe in it. I think we are either full or we're empty. So if we're full, that means we have enough life experiences. We've traveled, and by travel, I don't necessarily mean getting on a plane. I mean, maybe you've gone to the next town and have talked to people. Like, you have experiences to write about. When we're out of experience, we're empty. We need to go fill it up again, like Julia Cameron talks about filling the creative well. So one of her recommendations for that is artist dates. I'm definitely not great about getting out for artist dates, especially in the final stages of getting a book ready to publish.
Yeah.
My artist date is like doing nothing these days. It is not super creative, but inspiration comes from everywhere. Reading books, I absolutely think writers read a lot. I don't read fiction. I've tried. I think I'm not a good liar, so I can't write fiction, and I just never get into fiction stories. I have tried. Like, I am all nonfiction, self-development all the way. So you can get ideas from books, from all the reading you're doing, talking to people. I mean, if I was a writer that sat holed up in my office all the time, I think I would run out of stuff. Where we need to have life and clients and colleagues and peers and mentors, having like all these people show us what's going on in the world.
Yes, so true. I love this concept. People in the chat are loving it too, just of the empty or full. And like, if you feel stuck or you feel like you're in quote unquote writer's block, get out and get filled up.
Yes. Or maybe you're trying to write about something that's not really exciting to you. Like, you feel forced, like, I need to have a blog on my website about this because all my competitors do. Like, that's not exciting.
Right. Right. Yeah. And so again, it's kind of coming back to looking at your thoughts too. Like, what's the thought you're having about what you're writing? And if your thoughts like, well, I don't really want to do this, but I feel like I should, like, write something else.
Yes. Write anything. Write a grocery list, write an email, write a text message, whatever it is, write something else and come back to it.
Yes, exactly. Well, Jacq, this has been so great. We're going to finish up with our lightning round here. And this is just the 5 questions that we ask everybody who comes on the podcast. So first thing that comes to your mind, first question is, what's your favorite way to make time for self-care while running your own business?
I plan ahead. I block Mondays and Fridays on my calendar consistently, and also certain times of the month, depending on what's going on with my cycle or the moon, blocking the time for me first.
Yes, so good. What is one tool or strategy that you use to help with time management? You kind of just answered also, but
I know, like I'm going back to my cycle. So knowing how much energy I'm going to have, that's how I use 12-week planning. So looking ahead to what's going on with the moon and my cycle, I will plan what writing and business and life activities, even like workout activities for each week. So I align that with what's going on. So I'm not burning out, keeping consistent with my energy.
yeah, great. What is one of the most powerful business or mindset books you've ever read?
Cool. Probably the most recent one is Zero Limits.
Ooh, that's a new one. I haven't heard of that yet.
I'm looking at, it's on my desk, The Secret Hawaiian System for Wealth, Health, Peace, and More. It's the creator, I mean, not the creator, but someone who researched the Ho'oponopono technique, and Joy Vitale, and I forget the co-author's name, Hugh Len something, I can't pronounce the last name, but really great book for looking at everything.
Yes, that's so good. I just wrote an email about I'm not going to say that right either. But about that technique. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you.
Yes. I have that on a sticky note. Right.
Me too.
Yep. I love
Been
it.
sitting on my desk for like 6 months now. It's so good. Okay. What is your favorite quote or mantra, affirmation for when things get tough and you feel like giving up?
This too shall pass.
So true. So the podcast is called Success with Soul. What does Success with Soul mean to you?
Being truly authentic to me. So I think as long as I'm showing up in all the places in my life, on the page, with my clients, with my family, with everyone, the same, then I think success is there.
Yeah, so good. Thank you, Jacq. This was amazing. Where can people find you?
Thank you so much. You can find me at intuitivewritingschool.com or soon JacquelineFisch.com. I'm splitting up 2 websites.
Good luck.
Thank you.
And congrats on your book. When does it come out?
Thank you so much. End of June is the current target. Intuitive Writing, the remedy for writer's block and the secret to authentic communication.
Oh, so good. Okay, so everybody's going to have to go get that book when it comes out. And thank you again so much for being here. This was lovely. And I'd be curious to hear too from everyone in the incubator what you thought of video off for the whole time. Thanks, Jacq.
Thank you so much for having me, Kate.
Yeah.